There is a reoccurring theme when putting a motor as large as a Dodge Viper V10 into a chassis as small as a Nissan 240sx. Not nearly enough space, which means we have to make the space. Now that the driveline is in place in the car, that doesn't mean that we are anywhere near being finished. We still have tons to tie up in the engine bay. But everyone knows that looking good is equally as important to actually running and driving. So today we're going to be spending a little bit of time on the interior and the exterior, starting with a hood. This OEM hood wasn't in the best shape. You can see some spots of rust coming through on it, and it unfortunately got caught in a windstorm, bent the rear up. So this thing just wasn't really in the best shape, and we sacrificed it for science in order to figure out if it was going to clear, and obviously the answer is no. But this hood is not the one that is going to be run on the car. This hood is the one that is going to be run on the car. I went ahead and picked up a nice Sebin carbon fiber hood, and what I am hoping is you can see this raised section here is, I would assume, a little bit higher than the factory hood. We're still going to have to trim the underside. It has that vent there, so my theory could really be the opposite, where this section could actually be lower than the factory hood. But there's only one way to find out. We're going to get to cutting on this thing. Oh my goodness. One other major part of picking an aftermarket hood, besides hopefully some clearance, is the weight savings. You guys know we just added a lot of weight to the front end of this car. I've seen your comments. At some point, we'll get this thing on the scale so we can see what the weight distribution is on it, so you guys can all go down in the comments and say, hey, I told you so. But for now, we're going to do a quick comparison on the scale between how much weight we're going to save on this carbon fiber hood compared to the factory hood that has already had some material removed from it. 35. One more time? Yeah, 35. So it's not going to balance for long, but 35 pounds factory hood. 3, 2, 1. So right about 10 pounds. Right about 10-pound weight difference just right off the bat swapping the hood. So at least we're going to lose a little bit of weight at the front end of this thing. Yeah. As you can see, we are hitting much further back than I was expecting, hoping that that was stock height, which obviously it is not. So the front looks like it is going to clear like I was hoping it's going to clear, but we are going to have to make some space further back. That did not completely solve our issues, but you can see that we are much closer to shutting than we were after that first cut. You can see this is kind of an indication of about how far we have to go. It's down on that side, but it's just kind of sitting on there a little bit lopsided. But I think that this hood makes it much more subtle. Now I am going to have to cut forward some. Originally I thought I was only going to have to do this section, but right over here is the throttle body, so we are going to have to make sure that we leave some space for the throttle body right there. And then looking back here, you can see the fuel rails. There's just a little bit of touch right there. I don't even know if I'm going to go that far back, but we're going to go ahead and clearance back just a little bit further there as well. But underneath here at the front, you can see plenty of space. I have it trimmed really close to that air filter in hopes that it'll kind of like box it in and like seal it to a certain degree, but I think that we're going to be good there. We just have a little bit more trimming to do. Much closer. I don't have it bolted down, but we are getting there. Just the man I wanted to see. Come take a look. I think we have our final rough cut here. Still a little bit more, you know, to do, but what do you think?
I'm kind of concerned about how mad the people is going to be that you cut this hood.
I would assume, I've been cutting it for a while now, I would assume that they're already in the comments letting me know. And the hood itself, I have to do a little bit more tweaking on the hinges. I'm going to have to slot those holes a little bit, which is, you know, kind of normal aftermarket hood things. The whole hood needs to go back a little bit, but the gaps themselves are actually not too bad. And again, when the hood shifts back, it'll line up pretty darn good back there.
Yeah, other than that, looks aggressive. Like, I like this.
I like it a whole lot more than the factory hood, and I think it's because of this raised section. Even though it's basically the same size hole, the hood itself goes basically a contour kind of above it, or at least up to the manifold, where it was really sticking out of the stock hood. So I'm certainly not hating it like I was the stock hood. So
yeah, it looks awesome.
All right, Fernando.
We're gonna have a debate. Like, they're gonna think that you actually copying like the ZR1 design type thing, you know. This is clear, you know.
That's actually a good point. It is kind of, yeah, like the little window like the ZR1. So, but I do need your help with one more thing, because what I have here is a bunch of carbon fiber pieces that I just trimmed out of this. I did throw several more away that were too tiny because I had to do a lot of trimming here, but we are going to give these away. Fernando, awesome. How do you say carbon fiber in Spanish?
Fibra de carbono.
You heard the man. Down in the comment section, if you want one of the pieces, I have 2, 4, 6 pieces. The first 6 people that comment. We're not going to drag this out. The first 6 people that comment. What, Fernando?
Fibra de carbono.
You're going to send you some carbon fiber pieces. So if you want them, they're there for the taking. Yep. You just better be early. And look at what Eric just wheeled over. Some parts for the next video. You know we weren't going to be rocking the factory brakes with this thing making as much power and having as much weight in the front end. Some beautiful Willwood 4 pistons. We did do the understated gray, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but we're going to be running the factory rears for the time being, so I didn't want to do anything that was really going to pop and then have the really kind of ugly single piston in the rear and draw attention to that with like a red caliper. So those will be next video, and then some of those fittings that I talked about earlier. Look at all this stuff. Time to go through, figure out what needs to go where, and get it on. Now that the rough trimming of the hood is complete, that is going to wrap up the changes for the exterior of the car. I don't want to change anything else. I love the 97, 98 kooky body style, plus I love the kind of sleeper style of this thing looking mostly factory from the outside, you know, except for that big old hole in the hood. But that means that we can turn our attention to the interior because we still have a lot to do. I already have the OEM seats removed, and before we can put our new seats in and get a good test fit, I want to get the dash rough fit back in the car. We have a console, a shifter, lots of clearances to check. One piece that I forgot to give to Josh was the floor section that had the center mounts for the dash on it. Obviously, I had to cut these off, modify them, and trim them, but I do want to get this welded in place on the new trans tunnel. The dash bar itself, it's not going anywhere, but because we're going to have a console mounted to it and everything, I figure it can't hurt to get this all mocked up. Not nearly as pretty as what Josh does, but it will certainly do the trick for this. The dash is fully bolted in, even though we don't really need to fully bolt it in because it's going to come right back out. But that's going to make sure that everything is fit as it should. All of this is bolted back in place, completely unchanged. This little section here was unfortunately broken to start with. But this is where things start to get interesting, because the first thing that we need to test fit is our shifter. The Viper shifters are a little bit unique. They are a completely different T56 than really any other that comes in any of the Chevys, including how the shifter mounts. This shifter here is much more square than most of the other ones that are a little bit more, I guess, rectangular shaped. You can see that this is actually offset slightly to the back, so it can only go on one way, and then also the shifter itself is modified to face out to the side just because of how the Viper setup is as far as the interior goes. All right, back to bolt in place, and you can see we are right up against the console here. Obviously, this is going to have to move. We want this to face backwards. Doesn't look like it's as simple as just unbolting that. There's two kind of guide pins on each side, so it can only go on facing that orientation, or it'd be facing completely 180 degrees over here. So I think the easiest thing is going to be to literally just cut this, spin this back around, weld it so it's coming directly backwards. But I do want to check the fit with the console, because we may need to shorten this lever here depending on where the actual console itself was with the opening. But you can see this is the OEM rear, shifter plate location. I'm pretty sure that this is pretty close. So that's kind of looking good for us, that if this comes backwards a couple inches and ends up right about here, it's going to kind of be right where we want it. This is going to be about as close as we can get it, just given how that shifter is. But yeah, you can kind of see we have a lot of room to come backwards, that this thing is going to be pretty darn close to the location that it's going to look right with the factory trim piece. So my cut wasn't exactly straight, but I think that this will allow us to kind of like kick the back of the shifter up just a little bit. And we'll go ahead and weld that on just like that. So I got that burned in pretty well. Carrington was making fun of me saying that it's probably going to break, and it very well might, but it looks like it's got halfway decent penetration, so we'll see how long it holds up. Didn't break yet, Carrington. Didn't break yet. Look at that. I am massively, massively excited about this. No trimming needed. We can hit all the gears. We are going to have to do something about this, though. Such a small victory, but sometimes it's the little things that get you the most excited. That has been a question mark on my mind the entire time that we were trying to position the drivetrain, and the fact that I don't have to go chopping up the interior and it can look essentially 100% OEM is a huge bonus to me. Something else that I am equally as excited about, though, are the seats that I just picked up for these. A huge shout out to my buddy Pig on this one. He may very well be the #1 OG channel subscriber, and while normally he just gives me a bunch of crap on this, he actually proved himself to be useful and found these on Marketplace. That's right, there is gonna be a little bit of the Nissan Juke soul in the 240sx. Pretty darn good condition. Nismo RS Recaros, local to me, 45 minutes away. Literally couldn't pass up on these. I hadn't figured out what I wanted to do for seats yet, and this just jumped out that it needed to be done. I already went ahead, picked up some planted seat bases for these, and the Recaro sliders are on the way. The nice thing about the Juke Nismo RS Recaros is that they are literally Recaro Seats Sportsters with the custom Nismo upholstery on them. Unlike the 370Z V2s, which look like they're the Seats Sportster backrest and then the 370Z seat bottom, I've never taken one of them apart. That's what they look like from the top to me. So if there's somebody down in the comments that can actually confirm that, that would kind of satisfy my own curiosity. But as far as these Juke seats, they are just Seats Sportsters. So I can buy an off-the-shelf universal Recaro slider for it, bolt them to the planted rails, and this should be as simple as bolting them into the car. If there is one thing that I am still very good at, it is looking like an idiot on camera. And what I just said is absolutely no exception. CS Sportsters looking like they have the normal universal base on there with what I assumed was a bolted in bracket. Here is the bottom of the 240sx seat just for comparison. And one thing to notice is the difference in the height from side to side. Universal Recaro sliders, planted brackets. Should be easy as pie, right? Well, it is not, because this is what this bracket looks like. This is what I thought it looked like. So you can see that this is not just a simple bolt-in application. And the other thing is, this side, the driver's side, is different than the passenger side, and that is because this has this tilt mechanism in it. The backrest unbolts the same way, the seat bottom bolts in the exact same way. So in theory, I could buy a set of these and still accomplish what I want to accomplish. The problem is, these are $350 per side, and it looks like they're only available in Europe. So I've been looking at this for literally about 2 hours now, trying to figure out what the best course of action is. It looks like if I wanted to, I could probably adapt in some way, shape, or form with some fabrication those universal sliders onto here and make it work like I was thinking it would work anyway. But then I got to looking at these sliders that come on the 240sx. Essentially, if there is a way to use these in order to make the height of the seat as low as possible. Because if I could bolt directly to this, I would essentially eliminate the height of at least the planted rail, and then whatever the difference might be between the stock slider. So that would really be the best case scenario. I could get these fitting in the car as low as possible. It's just going to take some fabrication work. The only problem is I have no way to test fit these in the car in any way. With this seat base on there, it sits way too high to get a good gauge of if it's actually going to fit in the car. So basically our choices are get to chopping and hope for the best, or just go ahead and sell these and get a seat that we know bolts in, something that works, put the factory seat back in the car, something along those lines. And you guys are going to know what that decision is here in about 1 second.
Not bad. A little bit higher than I would like, but it'd be kind of hard to fit in here with a helmet.
Fernando! Yeah? Come be my test dummy. I think somebody your size is going to fit in this much better than I'm going to.
You mean fat or taller?
I just, yeah, you're more slender and a little bit shorter.
Dang, that looks good.
So you'll have to scoot up, but like you're good. You got like a decent amount, yeah. So you got a decent amount of headroom.
I do remember all those seats, but the seats, like the seat position was a little bit lower. Did I'm wrong?
So I think you're right, and it's just like an aftermarket. The floor on this is extremely weird shaped,
okay.
And the OEM seat was able to get down into it a little bit more. I'm confident to say that even if I used these planted brackets and those universal sliders, it wouldn't be any lower than that. I think that an aftermarket, I think an aftermarket seat is just not possible to get lower than that. But that's kind of the problem with this endeavor, is that I said I couldn't test fit them earlier, so we didn't know how this was going to fit, and we're already into it. There's really no turning back. So really the only thing is to get it finished. If we really don't like the way that they fit, I'll have to sell them, and they'll just be 240sx specific, and hopefully I can find somebody that's willing to spend the money on them. And this here is our kind of close to finished product. I have the passenger seat all mounted up. Really, they're right about the same height, so everything looks pretty darn good through the windshield as far as them being even. I went ahead and trimmed the side plastic so we get a little bit more of a finished look, but I do still need to go through, paint everything. I'm gonna go through, reinforce the areas that I can reinforce. Overall, I'd like for them to be a little bit lower into the chassis, but it just kind of is what it is with what we're working with. And who knows, if I like them enough in the car, maybe I'll end up cutting a spot in the floor to lower them down. Before we get going on the last aesthetic piece that I want to address in this video, I do have a question. If you guys would like to see a upholstery video, specifically on the interior of the 240sx. I wouldn't do anything too crazy, but in order to get these seats to match the rest of the interior, I think that we would need to do Alcantara headliner, rear seats to match, side door panels, and then also those rear door panels. So nothing too crazy, but let me know down in the comments if you think you would enjoy seeing a kind of how-to, some of the behind the scenes of the upholstery in the interior of the 240sx here. The intake filter placement here should do great to force as much air into this motor as possible, but everything around it and under it is very unfinished. Luckily, I have this that came on the car. Sits on there somewhere about like that, but obviously needs some cutting. So we're gonna go ahead, use this as a test piece, cut it up, get a fitment, and then also start building a box around that intake filter to seal it off from the heat around it. We're only really going to be able to do like the mock-up section here. We're probably going to have to recruit the help of Tim over at Industry Garage, who happens to be pretty handy with carbon fiber, to help us with the actual finished piece that I want to execute for this car. So this is your basic rough idea from the top, and then for the next section here, we're just going to get a little bit of cardboard to box this in and give us a rough shape of what we're going to need to make. And here you have the basic idea. This is a very, very crude initial mock-up of where I want to go with the basic idea here. I still need to extend that bottom piece further, but we are just basically looking to box in that filter so that way through that main opening there, it is as sealed as possible around it to allow this to pull as much air into the motor as possible. There's going to be a whole lot more work that goes into that specific part of the project, as well as many other things that we need to wrap up. But that's going to do it for this video, and I am very, very pleased with the progress that we made. Nothing critical to this thing running and driving, but a whole lot of stuff that has been on my mind that is now crossed off the list with a solution, or at least the beginnings of a solution. Thank you everybody for tuning in on all of the videos, but this project specifically, this one is a little out of left field, being such a unique motor swap. So it's awesome to see the interest that people have in it. Really kind of gives you the drive to keep going, since there are a lot of headaches with this thing. Speaking of that, in the next video, we're going to get back to the mechanical stuff. And one of the things that I've been working on behind the scenes, and it's got a lot that goes into it, is the wiring on this car. And believe it or not, it is way more complicated than the physical mounting and getting it into the car. So lots of work still to do. Thank you again everybody for tuning in. As always, we appreciate the support, and we'll see everybody in the next video.